This episode is maybe not appropriate for all audiences. I talk about my personal experiences and continued work with psychedelics and plant medicine. So I want to offer you a disclaimer that I am not a researcher. I am not a clinician. I am not offering you any directives or advice or suggestions. I am simply offering you my experience so that you can listen and consider for yourself. Anything you choose to do with this information is your choice. And I relay this several times in the episode, but I have been wanting to do this for some time, and I want to share what my experience has been and what the value of this kind of work has been for me. And I do that here. So I hope that you get some value out of this. All right. Enjoy. I've thought about doing this episode for some time, and it took me time to work up the courage to do it. But I want to talk about my use and love of the work that I do with psychedelics and plant medicine. The first thing that I want to say is I am not any sort of psychedelic therapy practitioner or facilitator. I am not an expert in this subject. What I am speaking to you about is my experience and my experience only. These are not recommendations. These are not directives. So anything you choose to do with this information is about you and from you. I am sharing this experience from my personal side because I think that, one, we need to talk about the value of psychedelics and plant medicine more because there is more and more research coming out that it is useful for people dealing with depression and anxiety and other kinds of mental health issues. My purpose in using them is to simply explore myself. And so it's done quite a bit for me, things that I can't get to with therapy or coaching or other types of personal reflective work. I have been able to get to through the use of psychedelics and plant medicine. So again, I'm going to share just my experience in hopes that it will crack the door open to other people considering what, if anything, this type of work might do for them. So I started working with plant medicines and psychedelics, primarily LSD, psilocybin, and MDMA, about 5.5 years ago when I met my husband. He and I do this work together. And we are proud that we do it together. And it is a very sacred experience for us, one that is very intentional, one that is very important and special for us as individuals and in our relationship. And when he first brought it to my attention that he had done this work for some time, I wasn't sure what to think about it because, when I lived in New York, people did Molly and they did ecstasy, and it was always about partying, and it was always like people would just lose themselves, and it never made any sense to me, and I judged it. And the way it was always presented to me wasn't from a place of intention. It seemed just a thing people were doing just to have a great time. And that's not wrong. Having a great time is not wrong. But that didn't feel responsible to me. It felt like an escape as opposed to something that was helpful and valuable. So I didn't have a great point of view on it when my husband started talking to me about it. But because I trust my husband, and I respect the man that he is and who he has become, and because he told me that, a great deal of the way he is now is due to his deep inner work through psychedelics and plant medicine, I had to consider it. So 5 years ago and change, I did my first MDMA journey, and MDMA is a heart opener. That is truly what it is. It is there to open my heart. It is there to help me deepen my relationship with myself. I have intentionally had journeys using MDMA to understand what self-love actually is. We talk about loving yourself and caring for yourself, and these terms that get thrown around on, in social media and just out there in the world. And I think that we can use those terms carelessly. I think that for me, one of the biggest journeys I ever had, one of the most profound, at least on MDMA, was, what does self-love look like? Because for a long time, to me, self-love meant loving myself when I was doing great and when I was winning. And it's very easy to love yourself when you're doing great and you look great and you're having a great hair day and like the business is running and people love you and, everything's going well. It's really easy to love yourself when that's happening. But what about when you are sick? What about when you are burnt out? What about when you are having family issues or you are having mental health challenges, extreme anxiety or depression? Or any of the other number of things that can occur in a person's life that can be devastating, then how easy is it to love yourself? And I found that for me, when I was going through the worst of my Graves' disease and hyperthyroidism, it was very difficult to love myself because, first of all, I looked weird. My eyeballs were popping out of my head. If you don't know Graves' disease, it usually brings along its best friend, thyroid eye disease, where your eyeballs are protruding out of your face. And so my face was distorted. My hair was falling out in clumps. I couldn't walk on some days because I had so much inflammation in my joints. They would swell to twice their size. It was a really scary time for me. And at the time I lived by myself and I lived in New York, and my whole life was about commuting. I had to commute and walk everywhere. And suddenly I was grounded. I couldn't move. There were some days I couldn't put my clothes on. And through that experience, my immediate response was to fight it, to battle it, to be angry at it. And I was throwing everything I could. I was doing the acupuncture. I was doing the nutrition. I was doing the meditation. I was seeing the endocrinologist. I was doing all of the things to try and make it go away. And I did not love myself during that time. And that was a time when I needed to love myself the most. But instead, I was angry that I looked weird and that my hair was falling out. And I was terrified that people wouldn't like me. And I was moving to a new city. I was coming here to Seattle. And who's going to give me a job? Who's going to date me if I look like this and I'm a hot mess? And so I was not kind to myself. It was my fault. I was doing something wrong. And so it was not easy to love myself at that time. And that being hard on myself is kind of a theme for me in my life. Not kind of a theme. It is a theme. It's a straight up theme. And it's a theme for, I think, a lot of people who are used to seeing themselves achieve and used to seeing themselves be really effective in their lives. We can be very hard on ourselves and we forget to love ourselves. And loving ourselves can get uncomfortable. I know for me, talking about loving myself is uncomfortable. I remember my husband and I were sitting and having dinner in Vancouver one night. We went to see a show in Vancouver and we were having dinner before the show. And we were talking about what our next journey on MDMA would bring and what intention I wanted. And I was starting to get frustrated and upset. And because I was trying to make even the intention around the experience perfect. And he pointed out to me that I was being very hard on myself about something that could have been really extraordinary. And somehow we got to, well, maybe your intention could be to explore what self-love really looks like. And MDMA is the perfect medicine for that because it activates all the feel-good stuff in your body. You can't get mad on MDMA. And you can talk to yourself. I can talk to myself and I can have conversations with my husband about things that would otherwise make me extremely uncomfortable or piss me off or trigger me or upset me. And I can talk about those things without any of those reactions. So I'm able to physically feel love on MDMA, and I'm also intellectually able to understand it differently. And I'm able to connect differently with a level of intimacy for the people that I'm with who are on the journey with me. That's the other part of this, is not just loving yourself, but how you love and care for other people. And even that's hard. Loving and caring for other people, especially when they're doing things you don't like. I mean, that's really difficult. And having a close and open and vulnerable intimacy with your friends, with your family, with your partner. We put up a lot of blocks. I put up a lot of barriers. And when things get a little too uncomfortable for me, I deflect with humor. I'm a whiz at cracking a really good joke at the perfect moment, just to shift the energy and take the attention off me. And so something that I've been looking at through the use of MDMA is why it's so hard for me to accept others' love and admiration or praise or kindness, because it's still a weird experience for me. But through using MDMA, I'm cutting through it. Because I could sit and talk about this with a therapist, and I have. And I could talk to a coach about it, and I have. And I could journal, and I could do all the things and go on the retreats and all the stuff. But there's something about going in with the help of this type of substance that helps you cut through the clutter and flip a light switch on some of this. And that's the thing that I would say for me has been the most rewarding and the most valuable about using plant medicine and psychedelics, is that I have been able to flip the light switch on stuff that has been a challenge for me my whole adult life. Stuff around confidence and self-esteem and how I value myself. All of that stuff has shifted dramatically fast through the use of psychedelics and plant medicine. Now, I cannot guarantee that it's that way for everybody. Again, this is purely my experience. I'm giving that disclaimer 1,000 times over. This is my experience. But what I have experienced is that some stuff has just ceased to be a problem. And I credit that to what the medicine sort of opens up for me, and allows me to explore without the fear of, getting punished or doing it wrong or messing it up. I'm just allowed to explore things, expand my mind, expand myself, and see the full capacity of who I am. And speaking of that, one of the things that I've really come to understand through this type of work is that this is the life that we're living right now. And the things that we're choosing to do, hopefully, are valuable, and they align with our values, and they make us feel good, and they're exciting for us and challenging for us. And they're not who we are. Everything that I do in my life is not who I am. It's what I've chosen to do. It's not my essence. It's not the core of who I am. The essence of who I am is a fire starter. I'm a door cracker. I crack doors open. I've had amazing people, my husband included, crack the door open for me so that I can see myself more clearly. And I like to think that my essence is that I'm able to help crack the door open for others so that they can see themselves as immensely grand and awesome as they are. So what I do in this life is great. I love what I do. I mean, I'm so driven by what I do as a coach and as a trainer and as a speaker. Like, that just feeds my soul, but it's not who I am. And so when the business takes it down that doesn't even make any sense. When the business feels a little shaky, or I'm not sure what the next move is, or I sent the wrong email, or I made a mistake, or whatever, I just remind myself, this is what I do. This is not who I am. And that is perspective. That gets me out of a spiral fast. That sets me right and gets me grounded. Stuff that used to send me spinning for days or weeks at a time now kind of comes and goes. It can come and go in minutes. Or I always say to myself, like, okay, I might have a moment, but give me 24 hours and I'll get my together. And I usually do, because I'm clear that this stuff is what I do. It's not who I am. And that space is something that I've been able to create through my work with plant medicine and psychedelics. And so MDMA is one access point for me to understand how to care for myself, how to love myself, how to get curious about myself and not worry about being seen. Because when you're using MDMA, you're being seen. You are your most natural self. I am my most natural self, and I'm being seen. And so if I'm doing this work with other people, which I have, I'm committing to allowing them to see me as I am without, I'm wearing red lipstick. And if you're watching the YouTube, you can see it. But if you are not and you're listening, without the red lipstick and the earrings and the whole, song and dance that we do for ourselves, I'm allowing myself to be seen. And allowing myself to be seen just enables me to be more of myself in my day-to-day life without worry about what are they going to think? What kind of stories are they going to make up about me? How are they going to see me? They're going to see me how they see me. And I am what I am. And believe me, there's still a little work to be done on full self-acceptance of who I am and how I am. But the rapid pace at which I have moved around that, I'm nearly 46 and I feel like I could easily have been, into my 70s still wondering who I am had I not done this work. So that's my experience with MDMA. I want to share a little bit about my experience with psilocybin, which are mushrooms. Mushrooms are a plant medicine. They are grown in the earth, which means for me, they are a plant medicine that can get you grounded, and it's very foundational. It gets me back to who I am, what I'm about, like really what I'm about. And what I've discovered about what I'm about is I'm a truth seeker. I'm a truth seeker, and I am someone who speaks when others don't speak. And I am someone who causes a bit of a ruckus sometimes for the sake of revealing truth. And I'm someone who sometimes just says, F it, I'm doing this because it needs to be done. And yes, I can question myself. And yes, I wonder, am I doing it right? And yes, all the things. But the speed at which I move through those moments of doubt is rapid fire because I am clear on who I am. And I get clearer and clearer every day. Because, by the way, when you take journeys like this with these substances, the journey lasts beyond the journey. I got a little thumbs up from my webcam. The journey lasts beyond the actual journey. There's all kinds of reverberation that happens for days, maybe even weeks after. And your body remembers those experiences. Your body remembers the things that you broke through. My body feels physically different when I come out of these journeys because I feel like I'm changing on a cellular level inside, and I have no science behind that. And please don't question me about that. That is just my opinion. This is my experience. But I feel like the degree to which I have changed has to be some sort of cellular level. There's just no other way to describe this. And I can recall once while on a beautiful psilocybin journey, I was sitting on the couch. I was alone. My husband was in a different room and I was staring outside. I live in the Pacific Northwest in Washington and we have beautiful trees. And I was staring at a tree and I was thinking, and I was recounting an incident. This was when I first moved to Washington and I hadn't yet started my business. I was working as a consultant, and one of the other consultants was walking me through onboarding with a client. And he asked me a question. And when I didn't have an answer right away, he said, "Come on, it's not that hard." And it was so disrespectful. It was incredibly disrespectful. And I was embarrassed in the moment. And I remember sitting on the couch, looking at the trees, thinking, that guy made me feel embarrassed. What kind of person would feel embarrassed when someone is unkind like that? Why do I need to be embarrassed about that type of thing? Why do I ever feel like I need to walk into a room and pull back, not say what I think, not ask a question if I don't know? Why on earth would I hold back just to avoid a potential comment like that? And when that journey was finished, the level of confidence that I felt moving into new client situations, but also dealing with people like that person was very high. It was a light switch for me because I realized how absolutely absurd it would be for someone to make me feel like I was small, because I'm not small. I just didn't know the answer to that particular question because it was all new. But I had to go through the experience of feeling embarrassed. And I would say I even felt a little bit of shame in that moment. And then I had this journey where I was remembering that experience. And I just started to laugh to myself because I thought, that is ridiculous that I would ever be made to feel small by a comment like that from someone who doesn't know me from anyone. And I'm historically not a person who doesn't like to know things. So if I don't know something, I want to find out and I want to have the answer. But to allow myself to not know, and the grace of not knowing something if I'm new, that was new for me. And that was something that I got from working with psilocybin. Psilocybin can be really beautiful. Psilocybin can be really challenging. It's been both for me. My very first psilocybin journey, I struggled. There were some things that I needed to look at very clearly that I had been kind of pushing away and hiding, on the back burner that I didn't want to look at. And it will surface what I need to look at. It will show me what I need to look at. And then I get to choose if I want to look at it or if I want to ignore it. But what psilocybin does for me is it puts things right in my face. I make the choice about whether or not I want to roll with it and explore it or fight it. And if I fight it, that makes for a really bad trip. I think it's the fighting that makes for a really bad experience. When stuff shows up that we don't expect to look at or to think about, because, it's taking your mind in a bunch of different places and it can go really fast sometimes. So you're seeing a lot of yourself at a really rapid pace. And so there's a lot to think about and a lot to consider when that stuff shows up, which is why it's so important to have an intention before you start any of these journeys, because you're hopefully shaping that experience, and the way that things come up are hopefully shaped in a way that can relate to what your intention is. But I'll admit there were times when my intention was kind of shaky. And those were the times when I got served up stuff that I was not expecting. Stuff about me, about my ego, about how highly I think of myself, about how not so highly I think of myself, about the constant comparison that I can do with others, particularly at this part in my life where I'm a solopreneur and looking at other people who are solopreneurs and thinking that they're doing it better or different or know something that I don't, which is why I stay off of Instagram, except for fashion and puppies. I just do the scroll through the fashion and the puppies. But, and also I post about this podcast on my business account, but I don't really spend much time on Instagram because I can do a lot of comparison, and it can be the death of me. So I have chosen to draw a boundary around that, so that I can get more connected to who I am and what I have to offer the world through my business. But the psilocybin is a way for me to connect with my personal mission. Like I said, it's a grounding, foundational type of experience because it's from the earth. It comes from the earth. So it's kind of bringing you down to the ground versus sort of sending you out into the beyond. And it reminds me, it doesn't remind me, it shows me who I am, the lovely parts and the not so lovely parts. And then I get to choose how I accept those not so lovely parts and how I really maximize those good parts. Psilocybin is, for lack of better terms, is a trip. It's something that can absolutely be fun. And it, for me, goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. And I am told the truth about myself. And I think that when we know the truth about ourselves, we then have more agency to be able to make choices about how we want to live our lives instead of hiding and telling ourselves stories about who we are that aren't actually real. When we have convinced ourselves that we are a certain way, and then somebody comes along and challenges that, that can really knock you on your ass. But if you know who you are, then when someone comes along and challenges you, you can step to the challenge. You can question them. And you can also look at yourself without feeling small and go, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. I'm not so great at that. Okay, let me think about that. Versus, I'm so ashamed and my whole identity has been crushed because this situation or this person disagreed with my vision of who I am. So that's psilocybin. And I realize this, I'm kind of skimming through these. There's a lot more to say here. But given this is my first time talking about this, I'm still exploring what this looks like to share with you. So I'm going to move on to the next one. The next one that I have worked with is LSD. I think everybody knows this as acid. LSD is a mind expander, which I'm sure you all know because LSD has quite a history and a reputation. LSD takes you to other places. It helps you see yourself beyond your world. It opens up the doors to what you can create and who you can be. For me, LSD is very aspirational and it's a real creative, it's a creativity driver. So I have also microdosed with LSD. And when you microdose, you take tiny little doses every day. I usually do them for 30 days at a time, take a little bit of a break. I might come back to it. Haven't microdosed in some time. But when I started microdosing, I noticed after a couple of weeks, I would wake up and I would just feel so creative, like just these powerful bursts of creativity that I felt I could do anything with. And I use that in my business. I use that in my coaching. I try to be creative in my coaching and come at things from different perspectives. I really love to be creative in all of the training materials that I create for all the training that I do. I'm trying to be creative here in my podcast. I love creativity, and the creative process and watching other people in their creative process because we are creative beings. Even if you're not a fine artist or a, musician, you have creativity. I put money on that. You have creativity, but it just shows up differently. So when I have microdosed with LSD, I wake up and my brain is just ready to create. And it's excited for it. Like I also experienced a lot of excitement and just joy and contentment for my life and where I am and what I've been able to create. And I do feel lucky and I feel very grateful. And the microdosing has helped me really connect with that gratitude and just build on it and be excited about things. I've also done longer journeys with LSD. They can last a while. They can be really fun. They are very deep and introspective. A lot of the work that happens when you are on a journey with a psychedelic or a plant medicine is individual and internal. When I first started doing this work, I was a chatterbox and wanted to talk to my husband and just ask all kinds of questions and just have constant conversation because I was discovering everything. And after a handful of journeys, he said to me, next time we do this, you really should think about going inside and being with yourself because that's where the real work happens. It's not by talking to me. It's by going inside and looking at yourself. And that was scary for me because I thought, well, what's wrong with wanting to talk and connect? That's all I've ever wanted is just to talk and connect with people, especially with the man that I've committed my life to. I want to talk and connect. And he said, yes, that's a beautiful thing. But also you have to go inside. And he just kept saying that you have to go inside. That ended up being a bit of an argument because I didn't like hearing that. But eventually I bought into that. And now being alone for some time during the journey does not scare me. It is quite exciting and quite interesting because I find myself interesting. And, I don't say that to be like arrogant. I say that because I think I'm interesting and I know that you are interesting as well. You are an interesting person. How you think, what you do, how you see the world, how you approach things. That's interesting. It's interesting stuff. And if you weren't interesting, I wouldn't be a coach, because people fascinate me with the stuff that they tell me, the way they think and the way they see the world and how they put things together. It blows my mind. I've worked with engineers in the gaming industry. I have worked with people in nonprofit. I've worked with people in hospitality who are of this extreme service mindset. All of them think in ways that I don't. People are interesting. That includes you. And so why wouldn't you want to explore the interesting side of you? Why wouldn't you want to see, what else is here? If I could do this, what else is possible? Maybe I just need some kind of unblocker. I think that's all we all need, is just a little bit of an unblocker. And that's what psychedelics and plant medicine can be, an unblocker. You kind of have no choice. Well, you do. You always have choice. You always have choice. Because I have found that when I fought something that I was being shown on a journey, it became really hard. Instead of just letting it come and go and flow throughout, past me or through me, things can get really hard when we fight. And I think this happens whether you're on a journey or not. If you fight something and you're constantly questioning, why is it like this? Why can't it be something else? Why do I have to? Why me? Instead of choosing it and flowing with it, things become a lot harder. And that's something special that I have really seen evidence of when I'm on a journey, is that when I fight things, it gets harder. But when I let them flow, even if it's not my preference, and let's be honest, a lot of things that happen in our lives are not our preference. But if I can let it flow and come and go and just be with it as it is and make choices around that as the truth, instead of fighting it, life gets easier. I feel more ease. I don't feel as much stress. And psychedelics in particular have shown me what it's like to let something flow. And LSD, because it's very powerful, requires that sometimes I've had to hang on for the ride and just see what's there. Yes, I have seen, I get visual hallucinations. I get auditory hallucinations. I actually hear things, which is kind of cool. And I get extremely creative, and not for nothing, I'm pretty funny. Pretty funny normally, but I'm really, really funny when I'm on a journey. And I like that part of myself. But then I go inside, I get quiet, I find a space, I wrap myself up in a blanket, and I just close my eyes and see what's there. And I ask myself questions, and I check in with my intention, and I get curious about myself and what I need. And I can do that uninterrupted in these journeys. My brain has nowhere to be but there. You can't be on your phone scrolling Instagram. You can't be on your computer answering emails. You can't be eating. You can't be doing things other than just being with yourself. And being with myself is sometimes the hardest thing to do. I don't know if you can relate, but being in the quiet and being with myself can be challenging because I'm so conditioned to do things all the time, fill the space, achieve, send the email, get the client, build the deck, on and on and on and on. And what these medicines have allowed me to do is carve out dedicated time and space for me. And I treat it as a responsible, intentional, beautiful experience. I don't mess with it. We create space. We clean the house. We like to sage. We don't do sage because sage makes me nauseous, but we do some other things. We cleanse. We sit down. We have an intention. We don't mess around on TV and on social media leading up to it. We eat light. And then we go into the journey. We treat it as sacred. And that is because you are sacred. You're not something to be messed around with. I'm not something to be messed around with. We're not here to mess around with each other. We're here to do good things, create good experiences in this world. I'm here to interrupt patterns. That's my mission. Interrupt patterns, crack doors open. Seek the truth about things. That's why I'm here. And I want to know how I can do that to the best of my ability. And Psychedelics and plant medicine help get me there. They help me feel more comfortable in my own skin. They help me understand who I am. And when I do that for myself, I have more compassion and love for other people. And when I have more compassion and love for other people, life becomes easier, period. End of story. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a huge lack of compassion and love in our world right now. So if we can learn to give it to ourselves, imagine what that could be like if we gave it outward. So that's my very tip of the iceberg, one-way conversation with you about my experience with psychedelics and plant medicine. Again, this is my experience only. I cannot vouch for how it will be for anyone who decides to try these things on their own. I can only talk about the value and the good that it has done for me. But I know that this is a subject of curiosity for many people that I have worked with. And so I want to share the information freely and openly. All right, that's all for now. Take good care. Bye-bye.